Said after the feast, we could find him near the Jordan, outside Jericho.
We passed Jericho a while ago.
Near is a relative term.
And John's never where you expect him to be.
He's never.
I've been waiting for this moment. Hey everybody, welcome to Grafted. I'm Sam, this is Tom.
We're both elders in a Messianic congregation, and I lived in Jerusalem for 2 years, so we're looking at it from a Messianic perspective.
Miracles.
Yes, John. Signs and wonders.
From who?
You.
Are you adding those to my list of infractions? Only a Pharisee. You would have labeled Moses a lunatic for talking to a shrub.
I'm like torn with John.
Why?
They present him like an absolute wild man, you know? And I get it. He was eating locust and honey. John's most likely coming out of Qumran because he's living in the desert. Mm-hmm. He was set apart at birth, or just after birth. His parents actually set him apart, it says in Luke.
A super prophetic birthing and coming up to his birth.
And he leaves Jerusalem into the desert.
Right.
Well, that's where we know Qumran was, where they found the Dead Sea Scrolls thousands of years later, right? Yeah. So then all of a sudden he grows up. You don't hear anything about him in the text. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden he's eating locust and honey.
Yeah, and hanging out in rivers.
I remember talking to a Dead Sea Scroll scholar in Israel about John, and I was like, was John an Essene? Meaning, was he one of these guys that are most likely a part of this community at Qumran? And he said, if he wasn't a part of the community at Qumran, it was a community like that. Meaning this was this really, really extreme sect of Judaism. They're more conservative than the Pharisees. So when you left, they were like, you're a son of darkness now.
Wow.
They're the only, the only ones who are the true believers. So he leaves, I think, probably be eating locust honey, because what else was he gonna eat, So maybe he's a wild man. But I don't know if he's as wild as he gets presented. It says in Isaiah 40, right?
Right.
Preparing a way in the wilderness, make straight the path.
Yeah.
Which is really what he was doing, and even that community was doing.
I mean, I think it's probably fair to say that he was a pretty radical guy. I mean,
so
even being in a scene, calling out Herod, and then preparing the way of the Messiah, those are some really radical things. So I hear you. I also just really like the character.
I'm gonna march straight into his court, and I'm gonna tell him to his face. My followers will love it.
You do know how that's going to end, don't you?
I get arrested all the time. It's what radicals do.
He's bold.
I'll be fine. Herod is afraid of me. The people hold me to be a prophet. Some say Elijah himself.
Maybe not the Elijah. But we both know the Elijah-ness of your Lord.
The Elijah-ness?
Because
You just said Elijah-ness. I've used words like that. You just put ness at the end of something, and it's so okay.
Do you know what?
In a good company.
He's presenting John as a little full of himself.
He is a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
beginning to wonder why you're taking this so slow. Why you're always running away after performing miracles. Tell me, why do you always go off to these desolate places?
I need solitude. I'm working on something. A sermon. A big one.
Ooh.
You're the planning type. I always say the first thing that comes to my mind.
I was going to make a side note on the difference between solitude and isolation. Because solitude and isolation are two very different things. Even Dietrich Bonhoeffer talks about this. But that's one thing that Yeshua did well, is that he was in and among the people and his disciples, but he knew when he had to get away and be with his Father, which isn't isolationism, that's solitude. Bonhoeffer puts it, let him who cannot be alone beware of community, and let him who cannot be in community beware of being alone.
Bonhoeffer was amazing.
He was amazing. I love him.
Wow. And speaking of martyr, we got another martyr. I mean, John.
In preaching and in life.
Yes, I remember from the time you started talking. And I heard about that brood of vipers coming. That was classy. Do you know how the poets say vipers are born?
Yes, they hatch inside their mothers and eat their way out, killing their mothers in the process. I thought it was a pretty good line.
Yes, but no one wants to be accused of killing their ima.
Yeah, I'm not here to make friends with religious leader.
The brood of vipers comment. So in extra biblical writings, Jewish writings, it actually was common for them to refer to each other when they're having heated discussion. They call them polemics, calling each other snakes.
Really?
That was, it's kind of like when you're family, you know, you say things a little more heated than you do with, you know, strangers or quasi friends. And so this whole brood of vipers, because even Yeshua has some harsh words at times as well,
Definitely
you know.
Yeah.
So, but it's just a family, inter-family discussion, debate, you know, about how should you, this discussion even here, what is their relationship to the law of Moses? You know, how is this to be understood? This was the big debate. We talked about Sabbath in our previous reaction video, and it was, okay, how do we follow the Sabbath? That was the big debate in all these different commandments. And then Yeshua's bringing this whole new element, the new covenant, the breaking into the kingdom, you know, all this heaven coming to earth in him. And like, this is a big shift in new revelation. Hey, if you've been impacted by our videos, we want to ask you to donate to Grafted so we can impact even more people with the importance of Jesus and Jerusalem and the Jewish people and awaken people to that biblical context.
Yeah, so click on the link in the description below to partner with us financially.
Are you really going to be nice to these people?
I suppose not. Just be careful.
Now is not the time to be careful. 30 years you've been here.
David was a shepherd and in the wilderness and on the run for 30 years before he became king.
Yes, and then he ruled for 40 years. He killed a bunch of people, made horrible mistakes, and then he died in bed with a teenager. He was not married to her.
Maybe not the best
That's one way to put it.
But also, she was there to keep him warm.
I know.
That was a really brilliantly written summary.
It was.
Of David's life. But in a very, very negative perspective. I think I could see where he's squirming. Yeshua's squirming a little bit. Well, I mean, you know.
This is our relative.
That's one way to say it. But he's like, he is the greater son of David for a reason, you know?
Yeah.
So there is a reason that he had the covenant, the Davidic covenant was made with him. But this is good.
John's like, come on, man, let's get this party started.
He's fiery,
right?
He's fiery. There are certain flavors in the family of Messiah like this. They're just fire,
for sure.
You know, and we need this.
Absolutely.
They're called the prophets. And look, here we are, 2,000 years later, and we still it's this wrestle between the prophets, right? And how do we allow the prophets? But they stir things up. So then the pastors, the shepherds, like, whoa, stay over here. But we need them as a part of the congregation.
Keep us moving.
Makes you can't have everything just in order. And so, but then the prophets don't really want to be here. They want to do their own thing. So it's like this whole thing where we all need each other, actually.
I know what you mean. But what I'm saying is, taking all this time, telling all these stories, I must confess, I'm eager for you to get to the point.
Very prophet, right?
I'm going to tell stories that make sense to some people, but not to others. And that's just how it's going to be.
A teacher. What a teacher.
I get it. It's not like I'm preaching stories for children either. It's becoming real, isn't it? Everything we've prepared for.
It is.
Wow.
I mean, it's always been real, but it's one thing to preach about it. To hear my Abba's prophecy growing up and your Ima's song.
Can you imagine that context?
But it's heavy when it becomes real.
Wow.
No?
It's true.
Do you feel ready?
Can you imagine?
I'm always ready to do my Father's will. But that doesn't make it easy.
It's good.
That's the truth.
Listen, I was rude to you before. But it's only because we go back so far and I can tease a bit.
I love it.
But you know that my heart is yours. My life is yours. The sole reason why I was miraculously conceived by two old people was to pave the way for you.
Wow.
Can you imagine that? What if you were Yeshua's cousin? I mean, that would be like, what?
What?
I'm here to serve you. I mean, it's different than the mom. I mean, I'm a guy, so
Right.
harder to relate to his mother or something. But his cousin or, his friend
his
growing up,
brothers even.
we were neighbors.
Right.
Or something. Like, that's like, what?
I love the context that they just painted too. Even John hearing his father's stories, like these prophetic words that were spoken about him, like what he is designed to do. Living with that and then being at this point in time and place in history, like you can't even imagine it. You can't even imagine it. And like I love that they captured like the friend of the bridegroom message right here that John says, it's the joy of the friend of the bridegroom when the bridegroom comes, that context, and it's like you're seeing that, like my life is yours, which is one of the things I love about John.
As we get toward the end of this age and his return,
right?
I think it's going to be the same way. We're looking at the book of Revelation and Zechariah and Joel, and we're like, I mean, if it's not us, it's in the not so distant future. It's like, this is happening. That's what he's saying. This is coming to life right now.
Right.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you want to see our full reaction to this chosen episode, click over here. And if you like our content, please subscribe below.
I majored in air drumming.
You about ready?
Minored in it.
We're waiting on you.